Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me very great pleasure to have the honour of introducing His Excellency Mr. Samir Abdulla Nass, the President of the Union of Arab Chambers.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Baroness Simons, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's given me a pleasure to be here with you at the Arab British Chamber of Commerce conference, and it's gives me a little bit of wonder. You know, history today is changing before our eyes. The geopolitics in the world is changing. With the post-pandemic, as well as the Russian-Ukraine war, as well as the Brexit situation and the economic crisis that are challenges that the UK is facing, and with the Arab world looking at a different ambition, the blockage, I mean this block of from the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf, these 22 countries have huge opportunities, untapped opportunities, young population with huge resources, natural resources. The periodic table, majority of the periodic table resources are available in those countries. And I feel it's time for the UK to take opportunity to be a partner rather than considering the market of the Arab world as a consumer, a target for productions and sales. I think partnership is about to take place, should take place to help the UK and the Arab world together as partners. And I notice also there is huge commitments by the Arab countries. The sovereign funds of the Arab countries are looking into the UK with confidence and the economy of the UK, and to support the economy of the UK with investment throughout all sectors, when it comes to sports, to technologies, logistics, tourism, and so on and so forth. I think the reciprocal should take place with the UK company to look at how they can go further in partnering with the Arab world. And we notice there is a lot of, there's a big giant waking up, which is Saudi Arabia. With their reform in 2030, I think we're going to see huge transformation in the Arab world, and the Arabs are eager of partnering together with UK companies and UK governments to look at how we can move forward in partnering to enhance and take that opportunity together to benefit all. And I look forward also to an FTA agreement that's under negotiation today with the GCC, with the UK, and that, I think that's a step in the right direction, and I think it's about time that we do that. Our relationship with the UK needs no introduction. It's been there for hundreds of years, and I think we could build up on this good relationships together. Thank you very much.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you for that very encouraging contribution to our deliberations today. It was enormously helpful to hear what you had to say, and thank you very much. I hope you feel that the enormous group of people who have come here today have made it absolutely worthwhile coming and joining this summit. And we are very encouraged by what you say. And of course, I know that, as we said, the IMF and the World Bank are very encouraged by the way your economies are moving in the Middle East. So, if I may, I'm now going to turn to Simon Penney, who is His Majesty's Trade Commissioner for the Middle East. I've known Simon for quite some time, and I'm sure what he says will be very interesting. Simon.
Thank you, Baroness. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, welcome and good morning to everybody. I'm delighted to be joining all of you here today. This is the second time that I've attended, and I didn't quite realise it's only the second time this event's been held in its current format. So I can safely say I've been at every one of these since they were formed. But it's great to be back, genuinely, after a sort of 3-year layoff, so it feels. But as I will share with you in a moment, the relationship in the space of trade and investment has had anything but a layoff over the last 3 years. And I'm sure all of you will enjoy what will be an incredibly insightful and important meeting of minds today as we work together on the strapline of shaping a shared vision. Thank you, Baroness Simons, Bandar, Your Excellency Sheikh Khalifa bin Jassim bin Mohammed Al Thani, and everyone at the Arab British Chamber of Commerce for inviting me. As I said, I last spoke here in July 2019, and how things have changed. Today, as countries around the world grapple with energy shortages, cost of living, inflation, and the impact of climate change, it's incumbent on governments to do everything within our gift to drive a green economic future and create long-term prosperity, as my preceding speakers have already mentioned. And I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly about the observation around partnership. It's been very much central to me in my role as the Trade Commissioner that trade is not one way. This is not about the UK trying to sell exclusively to consumer markets. This is about both the UK and every country that makes up the Arab world to develop both of our economies in partnership. And you'll hear a lot of that in what I talk about, and hopefully some of that will come through again today. The Department for International Trade, based here in the United Kingdom, as well as in embassies and high commissions around the world, is an integral route for the UK to deliver our economic priorities. Today's theme, as I said, is shaping a shared vision. To achieve this will require incredibly close collaboration between governments, between business leaders, between policymakers, and of course, and most importantly, between the private sector and enablers such as the Arab British Chamber of Commerce. There are many, many stakeholders that need to come together to align to make this happen. We must lead from the front without forgetting the audiences we serve, businesses from across the United Kingdom and across the Arab world. As I said, I'm here to represent the UK's Department for International Trade, or DIT. DIT's contribution is to do what only government can do to help our businesses succeed. We do this by prioritising 3 things, which I want to touch on today. The first is exports, the second is investment, and the third is trade policy. Let me firstly start with exports. UK exports to the Arab League totaled £28 billion last year. Of this total, 80% of all UK exports go into the GCC, with 20%, the remainder, going into the non-GCC countries. And I promise you this won't be death by PowerPoint because I've only got one slide, but I want to just show you the evolution of our UK exports to this important region over the last 10 years. It works. Good. So what you can see from this graph, and if you go to 2021, which is the last year we had full data, you can see the makeup of that £28 billion. The the 80% being the blue bar being the Gulf countries. But what I want to highlight, if you look back over the last 10 years, the first point is the impact of COVID. You can see clearly that our exports to the region were negatively impacted, unsurprisingly, by COVID, falling approximately 20% since 2019. Whilst the data shows that exports have remained broadly flat between 2020 and 2021, already this year in 2022, which is not yet on this graph, we have seen a 20% recovery so far this year. And we anticipate this year that our total trade should be bordering on the levels last seen in 2019. So we've seen quite a sharp return. The second point I want to make is the GCC is an incredibly important export market for the United Kingdom. As I said, 80% of all UK exports today go into the GCC. In fact, the GCC, if you take it in aggregate, is the United Kingdom's third largest export market globally outside the European Union. So outside of the European Union, it's US, it's China, and then it's the Gulf. So the Gulf is already an incredibly important trading partner for the United Kingdom. Within the GCC, Saudi Arabia, since COVID, has now become the UK's largest export market. This has been driven principally by the growth in services exports. In fact, whilst every other country saw a decline in exports as a result of COVID, Saudi Arabia saw no drop at all in the volume of services it consumes from the UK. This can be attributed, I'm sure, in part to the very significant reform agenda, which was just mentioned, under Vision 2030, with UK companies encouragingly playing a very significant role to date. The third point I want to mention on this graph is that UK exports to the non-Gulf countries have declined over the last 10 years. So if you look at the orange bar, it has fallen from, our exports to those non-GCC countries have fallen from £7 billion back in 2010 to £5.4 billion last year. Although, as I mentioned, we've started to see a recovery in those 2021 numbers. Our largest market within the orange section of this graph remains Egypt, but more generally, we have seen exports falling in almost every country with the exception of Morocco and Jordan. This remains a challenge, but also an opportunity for the UK and each member country. We have a shared ambition to deepen trade in both directions as partners. Whilst I stand here today as the UK's Trade Commissioner, I wholeheartedly recognise and support, as I said, that trade moves in two or more directions. Both parties, both countries, need to feel the benefit. We want to see Arab countries exporting more to the United Kingdom, and we are committed here to helping realise that ambition. This growth, no doubt, will be in traditional sectors, but most importantly, in new sectors that are driving what we call the fourth industrial revolution. Let me turn firstly to some areas where I believe we have a joint and significant opportunity. In a region where nearly half the population, 50% of the population, is under the age of 25, technology is a very significant driver for trade. So it's fantastic to see health tech, fintech, and edtech take centre stage in today's sessions. UK companies operating in these sectors have huge expertise already in the region with an appetite to do significantly more. Tama, the Middle East's leading healthcare distribution company, has agreed a 5-year deal to bring UK company Huma's market-leading technology platform to power hospitals at home, with remote patient monitoring to the 34 million people living in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The new healthcare program will begin with support for patients with diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. British company SentryTech provides adaptive learning software powered by AI to schools in Egypt and across the Middle East. By combining learning science, AI, and neuroscience, SentryTech can provide students with personalized learning paths, adjusting these as required based on learner input. And in fintech, where the Middle East is seeing a compound annual growth rate of 30%, British companies like Checkout.com in the payment space and Kestrel in the Islamic finance space are finding great success in growing their businesses. Supporting exporters is the bread and butter of what DIT does, and DIT teams across the region are using the platform of International Trade Week, which is happening across the whole of the United Kingdom this week, to showcase opportunities in your growing markets. In fact, I was earlier in this week part of a UK roadshow where I have my teams from the various embassies visiting London, Coventry, Leeds, and Glasgow, where we've brought a number of countries from the Middle East to showcase their opportunities, including Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. And on Friday, I'm very much looking forward to the Red Sea Global event here in London, kindly hosted by the ABCC, which will showcase the vast opportunities for UK businesses in the merged giga project of the Red Sea and Amala in Saudi Arabia. But to support exports, an integral part is finance, and I'm delighted that the UK has an incredibly powerful and compelling offer in UK export finance. It's an integral part of what the UK government does to support exports. UKEF helps exporters secure insurance and working capital when they win business in the Middle East. They also give project owners access to long-term finance and introduce those projects to a high-quality UK supply chain of companies. This includes support in over 60 currencies, including lines of credit, limited recourse project financing, public-private partnerships, and Sharia-compliant finance. The MENA region is one of UK export finance's largest, with a market risk appetite of approximately £38 billion. There still remains significant headroom within that £38 billion for UKEF to deploy more funding to the Middle East. In addition to that, there is a further £2 billion worth of clean growth direct lending available globally. And that is hard cash, that's not guarantees, that is cash available to deploy in projects such as renewable energy, energy efficiency, green buildings, clean transportation, sustainable water, and wastewater management, just to name but a few. We have UKEF country heads in the UAE, in Saudi, Qatar, Egypt, and Morocco, covering the whole region. So if there are project owners here in the room that are looking for financing and not yet aware of what UK Export Finance has to offer, please do let me and my team know. Turning now to the second area of what we focus on, it is investment. Continued high levels of investment is a priority for every single government. We are no different to every other government sitting here in the room. Attracting investment and attracting FDI to support local economies is critical. We want to ensure that overseas investment into the UK supports our ambitions, which include green economic growth across the whole of the United Kingdom in our industries of the future. And we look to partner, again the word partner, we look to partner with like-minded nations whose priorities align with ours. This is why our recently announced multi-billion pound sovereign investment partnerships with the UAE and with Oman, and also the strategic investment partnership with Qatar, are so important. By working together, we can guide investments to sectors that really matter. We do not have all the answers. No one has all the answers, but we will be much stronger together as we unlock the industries of the future together. Whether that is investments into life sciences to solve global challenges, or an investment into clean energy to create sustainable energy solutions that can be rolled out in remote, off-grid locations in the desert. Of course, investment does not happen in a vacuum, nor is it only one way, as I mentioned. The UAE's ADNOC and Majesty are already partnering with BP on green hydrogen projects in both the United Kingdom and the United Arab Emirates to drive a clean growth revolution. BP has also entered into a strategic partnership with Oman on renewable energy and green hydrogen. And Actis signed an MOU with the Egyptian government on green hydrogen development over the summer. The UK continues to be a magnet for FDI as well, with FDI into the UK expected to generate more jobs per project than either France or Germany, according to Ernst & Young, and London retaining its title as Europe's most attractive city for FDI. DIT offers free support to help investors large and small. So whether you are a Lebanese tech startup looking to open an office in London, or a capital investor wanting to invest in the next generation of agri-tech solutions in Yorkshire, DIT is here to help you. This brings me to the third strand of what DIT does, which is trade policy. As an independent, sovereign, and free trading nation, the government's vision of a global Britain means looking east towards fast-growing economies to realize opportunities to grow trade and investment with like-minded partners. Our UK-Egypt Association Agreement covers trade with the most populous country in the region. We have similar association agreements in place with Jordan, with Lebanon, with Tunisia, and with Morocco. And you should see these agreements really as offering preferential terms of bilateral trade between the UK and those respective countries. And those were agreements that we inherited and rolled over from the EU, but they are now bilateral agreements between the UK and those respective countries. And we would dearly love to see those adding real benefit to companies at both ends. When we were last here, I recall being asked a lot the question about free trade agreements, and I'm sure it will come up a lot today, as it has done in the opening remarks, but I'm genuinely delighted to say that we announced the commencement of negotiations for a free trade agreement with the Gulf in June this year. And my colleague Tom Wintle, who is the UK's chief negotiator for the free trade agreement, will be speaking straight after me, so I won't in any way attempt to steal your thunder, Tom, on this most important topic. Let me just wrap up very quickly. I want to touch on, I've spoken a bit about clean energy and net zero, but really this is one of the most pressing global issues impacting every single one of us and every single country in this room, and it's a major priority, not surprisingly, of our government, and that is the race to net zero. COP26, as many of you will recall, was held in Glasgow 12 months ago, and it demonstrated the UK's commitment to global leadership towards a net zero future. I'm delighted, actually, we have here today Adam Harris from UK Export Finance. He will be speaking on today's Beyond COP26 panel later this morning. And as many of you all know, the next 2 COPs will actually be hosted in the Middle East, showing the importance of this region on the global stage and being part of the global dialogue. Next week, Sharm el-Sheikh will host world leaders at COP27 in a bid to secure further commitments to protect our planet. We are building a green partnership with Egypt to deliver on our Glasgow Climate Pact and keep 1.5 degrees alive. And next year's COP28 in the UAE has pledged to reach net zero by 2050. When I last addressed you in 2019, international trade was important to economic growth. And if I'm honest, economic growth was taken as a given 3 years ago, when international trade hit record highs and a global pandemic was unimaginable. Today, as we face global challenges, as I mentioned, in energy and food security, healthcare and climate change, international trade and investment is critical to each and every one of our economies. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, if we are to shape a shared future together, it is incumbent on those of us in this room to work together to lay the bilateral and multilateral foundations to make it faster, easier, and cheaper for all our businesses to trade and invest with one another and do what they do best. I'm sure we all share this common objective, and it's great to sort of see the numbers, as I mentioned, across the board starting to trend upwards. But I am committed as His Majesty's Trade Commissioner to ensuring the UK government does what it can do to support this ambition and encourage you to engage with us and your own respective governments to ensure this becomes a reality. And I've got one parting slide, which I will just show you the UK's footprint across the Middle East in terms of where we can support. And let me just very, very briefly leave that with you. But you can see that we have a British embassy in pretty much every single country that is part of the Arab League countries. And importantly, again, on the right-hand side, DIT, which I've just spent the last 15 minutes talking about, again, is in about 80% of your countries. So you have DIT staff already on the ground. They work for me, they work for my colleagues, and together our job is to work with you as partners to deliver a shared future. Thank you very much.
Well, Simon, that was a terrific overview, and thank you very much for not only delivering it, but delivering it with such energy and commitment. Very encouraging indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we now turn to Tom Wintle, who is our chief negotiator for the United Kingdom on the agreement that is being discussed at the moment with the Gulf states and the UK. Go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Baroness. Your Excellencies, Lords, ladies, gentlemen, good morning. It is absolutely fantastic to be here with you today. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the Chamber for inviting me. What a joy to be here, to be together, and really looking forward to today's events. As the Baroness says, my name is Tom Wintle. I am the UK's chief negotiator for the UK-GCC free trade agreement. And I'm just going to give you a UK perspective on the agreement today. I'm going to build on a lot of the remarks that you've heard. One of the risks of coming late in a speaking order is you risk contradicting. But I am delighted to say I will be building on, there are so many themes, commonalities, agreement in this, which I think is fantastic. So, as you know well, and as we've heard this morning already from the distinguished speakers, the GCC member states are absolutely key partners for the UK. We share long-standing relationships between our businesses, between our peoples, which have evolved, which have strengthened over the years into the modern partnerships the UK has today with both the GCC and the 6 individual member states. Now, these partnerships encompass extensive political, commercial, financial, security, educational, and wider socio-cultural ties. But in relation to trade in particular, which is my role, as we've heard today, the GCC is already the UK's 7th largest export market, with total trade worth around £33 billion in 2021. And from the slides we just saw, it is sounding like that is in a positive direction beyond 2021, which is good to hear. There are enormous flows already of exports, of imports, of investment in both directions. Over 10,000 UK SMEs already exporting to the Gulf region. And again, a thank you to the Chambers for everything you do in supporting and in facilitating that flow. However, there is much more we can do. And a free trade agreement between the UK and the GCC is a vehicle to greatly increase those flows of trade and investment. From food and drink to financial services and everything in between, it's an opportunity to remove barriers, to encourage investment, and to create opportunity for UK and GCC companies, large and small, to grow and to thrive. And again, to echo what speakers have already said, it really is in both directions. This is a partnership. It is mutually beneficial. UK and GCC economies can be viewed as complementary. And ahead of negotiations starting this year, the UK published a set of analysis, so this is all publicly available, that illustrated what we see as being the size of the prize. Now, our assessment showed that a UK-GCC FTA is expected to boost trade flows between the UK and GCC by at least 16% by 2035. However, if we are ambitious, if we go deeper than that, if we have a more productive and a deeper agreement, then the potential gains for the UK and the GCC can be greater still, for the benefits of all of our economies, for all of our businesses. Now, negotiations were launched in Riyadh early this year, an absolutely wonderful event that I was privileged to be part of, and indeed some colleagues were also here. And at that event, UK and GCC ministers committed us, the negotiation teams, to negotiating an ambitious, modern, and comprehensive FTA fit for the 21st century. Now, there's an awful lot of detail we could discuss about how that can be achieved and what that means in practice. You'll probably be relieved that I'm not going to try and cover everything with you here. But a few areas I wanted to draw out. For the UK, we are looking to strengthen our economic relationship with all the GCC member states, breaking down barriers, increasing trade in goods, services, supporting investment, driving economic growth for all parties in that mutually beneficial manner. For goods, there are both tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers that we are looking to tackle, that add costs for your businesses, that add costs for all of our consumers. For example, if we look in the food and drink sector, it's currently something like £625 million worth of UK exports to the region. And that's something that we believe can be grown by breaking down some of these barriers, by lowering some of the tariffs. And there's plenty of examples in the opposite direction for GCC companies importing to the UK. For services, the UK is the world's second largest services exporter, and services account for more than half of our exports to the GCC, and that's a figure that has tripled in the last 15 years. Again, we want to use the FTA to build on this by supporting ambitious new rules on issues such as transparency and supporting areas of expertise in some of the areas mentioned today, financial services, legal services, to ease business, to increase market access for companies so that you can trade, that you can invest more easily, and we can build on those flows. We've also been looking very closely at the vision plans of GCC member states as the states look to transform their economies, and believe UK businesses can play a role in supporting GCC countries meet those highly ambitious plans, be that in generating energy from renewable sources, taking advantage of the opportunities offered by the advances in innovative areas such as digital trade, life sciences, fintech, facilitating investment, supporting SMEs reach international markets. All of these are within the ambit, or can be within the ambit, of a free trade agreement, and are areas we are looking to progress. And in doing so, As with all of the UK's free trade agreements, we will retain the high standards and protections on products entering the UK market and protect the UK's right to regulate in the public interest. I could go on. There are so many areas where the UK and the GCC can be working together in partnership for mutual benefit, be that intellectual property, women's economic empowerment, transport. Baroness, I jotted down, I think you described it as multifaceted collaboration, and I could not agree more with that phrase. I think it's a wonderful encapsulation of what we are looking to do. If you do want more detail, please have a look at the UK strategic approach that was published ahead of launch. That goes into a lot more detail of all the areas we're looking to include and what we're seeking to achieve. So, what have I been doing since we launched? The first round of negotiations took place virtually over the summer, across 2 weeks, with UK and GCC negotiators coming together to discuss 29 policy areas covering all of those aspects of the FTA. I would like to thank my GCC counterparts and their excellencies for ensuring those negotiations got off to such a strong start. It was a real privilege to see and to feel the energy and the commitment on both sides as we discuss the full breadth of a modern 21st century FTA in a really cooperative and positive spirit. Now, of course, this is just the beginning of the negotiation, and there is a long way to go. In any negotiation, there will be tough issues to resolve, but as you have heard from the speakers this morning, that will and that determination to get there is so present on both sides. There's a positive energy and momentum to drive this forward. After round one, UK and GCC negotiation teams took away actions and questions. We are working through those ahead of round two, which we expect to follow shortly. The UK is absolutely committed to moving at pace in these negotiations. But coming back to what our ministers tasked us with at launch, the size of the opportunity, the value this can add to all of our economies and our businesses is such that we must focus on the substance over the speed and ensure that we are delivering that modern, comprehensive and ambitious FTA that we have been tasked with delivering. In closing, I would like, again, to thank the Chamber for inviting me to speak today and for all the support you've given us, and I know the GCC colleagues over the past year. Thank you. It is hugely appreciated. And I also wanted to thank you in the audience. Your interest, your queries, your questions, your insights, the things you want changed. I know a lot of you fed into our consultation and you're continuing to talk to us. Your voice is so crucial as businesses, as trading partners, in ensuring that this FTA delivers on the ground for you, for UK businesses, for GCC businesses. Thank you for your input, and may I encourage you to please keep talking to us. So there are a number of my colleagues here today, both from my direct team in DIT, from elsewhere in government. I will be here throughout the day. Please do come and talk to us. Please come and tell us what you want to see from an FTA, how this will help your business, and then together we can move forward to deliver for all of us. I look forward for the rest of the discussions today. Thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day. Shukran.
Well, Tom, thank you very much for that very encouraging and from the horse's mouth about what is going on in these negotiations. It's terrific to hear you being so encouraging and making everybody else really concentrate on what lies ahead. Thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me very great pleasure to introduce a very dear friend of the Arab British Chamber of Commerce, His Excellency Mr. Zayed bin Rashid. Sorry, the thing is collapsing underneath me. I do beg your pardon. I will start again. To introduce a very dear friend of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Zayed bin Rashid Kalyani, who is, of course, Kayan, I beg your pardon, sorry, who is the Minister of Industry in the Kingdom of Bahrain. Your Excellency, thank you very much. I'm terribly sorry. It's collapsing on. Mind your own.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allow me first to introduce myself. I'm Zayed Alzayani, the Minister of Industry and Commerce of the Kingdom of Bahrain. Your Excellency, Baroness Simmons, Chairman of the Arab-British Chamber of Commerce, distinguished guests and attendees, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here with you today as part of this important summit, which comes at a time of a new world post the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 has shown us how fragile the world is. It was a true stress test to the global order, which resulted in some countries faring much better than others. However, it has also shown us how vulnerable we could all be, and that what happens in one country or region could have an instant and long-lasting global impact. While we all have to contend with the new realities of inflation, energy crisis, geopolitical conflict, climate, food security, supply chain disruptions, and many others, we should not lose sight of the future and what it holds. How will our economies look like, and who will be the drivers? We have to transition from traditional trading to a new landscape, driven by innovation and technology, and led by entrepreneurs, SMEs, and more female participation. Bahrain and the UK established diplomatic and trade relations more than 200 years ago. The success of our strong relations can be witnessed through the continuous growing trade and investment volumes between our two countries. This growth phenomenon is also true when compared with the GCC and the UK trade and investment relations, which grew to pre-COVID levels of $50 billion in trade and more than $35 billion in investments. It is why the GCC, and under Bahrain's presidency in 2021, pursued to cement these relationships further with the UK and officially launched FTA negotiations, which seem to be on track for completion in 2023. Given the history and volume, the UK was identified as one of seven top priority countries to engage with in FTAs on the GCC level. Working with my GCC and UK counterparts, we have ensured from day one that the FTA will be an ambitious, comprehensive, and modern agreement fit for the 21st century, and it will contribute to economic growth and job creation by promoting trade in goods and services, as well as innovation in new fields and emerging technologies in the mutually beneficial manner. The first round of negotiations took place in August-September of this year, with the second aimed for November and December in this year, and the aims to explore the views of both GCC and UK sides on the topics mentioned in the terms of reference of the negotiation in preparation for drafting the legal text of the agreement and the launch of technical discussions. With English being our second language in the GCC, and with a huge British community residing and working in the GCC, we see this as one of the most prosperous FTAs and look for it to be a case study and a template for all other 6 ongoing FTA negotiations, as well as for those that are to come at a later stage. Lastly, allow me to share with you a bit more details about Bahrain. Going into the pandemic, His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, was very clear in his crisis management strategy. His vision was that the challenges of COVID are not merely medical, but more so economical and ultimately social. In the beginning, and as early as January of 2020, plans and teams were put in place to take care of the pandemic fallouts, whether it may be food security, medical equipment and supplies, or even something as small but largely effective in containment as contact tracing. By end of March 2020, we launched our first economic stimulus package, which was equivalent to 32% of our GDP, a purposely heavily loaded first shot with the aim of preserving businesses and jobs. Throughout the pandemic, we never had a single day of lockdowns, nor have we closed our borders, and our national airline Gulf Air continued flying. Bahrain maintained the highest number in testing and subsequently vaccinating, with the first vaccines being administered as early as November of 2020. In the second part of 2021, we launched our economic recovery plan, a comprehensive roadmap that shows Bahrain's economic path to the future. The plan highlights 6 major sectors, being banking and finance, oil and gas, tourism, ICT, manufacturing, and logistics. Today, we enjoy a growth rate of 6.9%, while inflation is kept at 3% and unemployment at 5.7%. With this leadership, competitive location, vastly talented local human resource, as well as a liberal labor immigration policy, we invite you to take a closer look at Bahrain and what it offers in the GCC and beyond. Thank you once again for inviting me today. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you, and it's really wonderful to be back in rooms filled with people. Thank you.